No cow. This aura is expensive. My snacks. Most people can afford it. Are you for it? For no class. Don't be late for your appointment. Think fast, or I could be your biggest disappointment. Disappointment, you don't want low key. Do I make you unsure? So sweet, but maybe I'm a monster, monster, imposter. Shapes and sizes cover your eyes. You're never gonna find me out. You're never gonna, never gonna, never gonna, never gonna, never gonna, never gonna. Shapes and
It's possible that I may have gone a little overzealous with the beard trimmer. All we can do is roll with it. Welcome to Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name is Jake, and I gotta tell you, today I am going to come in hot. Excuse me. Have a good day. Walked in. Well, let's open it as long as we're here. Oh. Apparently this mustache legally obligates me to participate in a 1970s pornography film. Well, looks like your old pal Jake's gonna make some money. Key grip? There's 178 people who would have loved to see... Oh, well. Anyway, it's gonna be a fascinating Tuesday. Kevin McCarthy is going to get embarrassed one way or another in the House today. He's hoping to be made Speaker of the House, and it might not happen. And genuinely, it delights me to say this, I don't have any idea what's going on. It makes no sense. I don't know what strategy these Republicans are following. I don't know what their goal is. I don't know what they're hoping for. I'm fairly confident, just based on their behavior up until this point, that it's shady. But we'll get to it when we get to it. First up, let us not forget that this is a party full of criminals, the Republican Party, and Ari Melber, a.k.a. your aunt's crush, has done a pretty solid takedown of the Republicans. So has a fella that I came across called Really American. We're going to have a look at both those videos because both say the same thing in very different ways and to very different audiences. First up, Ari Melber.
Also in the report, another former Trump staffer found out in advance that there would be a call to action to march to the Capitol and, as he put it, make noise. This was at a time when Trump's team was telling the authorities the exact opposite. The crowd would be at the ellipse only. So the report states that staffer's text is the earliest indication they found. Let me repeat. You're looking at a really important page from this report. That text I just read you is the earliest indication that Donald Trump did plan to wage his supporters in a call to arms to march on the Capitol.
Relevant in terms of prosecution.
Now, that's incriminating. Remember, if all you want to do is hold a rally or a protest, you could do it any number of places in Washington. And when you pick a place like the Ellipse and make that the place and do the security for that, well, you put all your chips down there. When you have a secret plan to go to the Capitol, any prosecutor looks at that and says, if you were just going to gather outside peacefully, why keep it a secret? You could have publicized that for weeks. Make sure everybody knows where they're going. No, it is incriminating. And then you add the other evidence in the report. The FBI found an online post that said it's not a rally. It's a final stand with people ready to die. Don't be surprised if we take the Capitol building. You'll note the document is not fully released because of security concerns. These are pieces of evidence that can help prosecutors prove intent, which is a required element for every crime that Congressman Raskin cited in that referral.
The fourth and final statute, anyone who incites, assists, or engages in insurrection against the United States of America, and anyone who gives aid or comfort to an insurrection.
Aid or comfort to an insurrection. Translation: you don't have to necessarily prove that someone was proactively planning this for months, but you do need to prove that they intended, in a very legal sense, to aid, comfort, or otherwise support the actual insurrection. It is a high bar, but there's a lot of evidence that is being built up for that bar. Now, when do these conspiracies begin? I'll tell you, the committee's evidence makes a strong case that they long predate the January 6th period or the couple days run-up or even the announcement of a January 6th rally. That's bad for Trump, again, if it shows a long-standing plot by hook or by crook or with a team of crooks to steal the election. This is also different than the public understanding. Remember the morning of January 6th, 2021.
Okay, tell us, Ari.
Outside of Trump's circle, people didn't view that day as the dangerous culmination of a looming criminal plot. Intelligence services largely didn't. The Capitol Police obviously did not. The National Guard, in the main, didn't view it that way. Even Trump's most ardent critics didn't wake up that day bracing for the nature of the very sophisticated and effective attack that did delay the certification because of the reasons I just told you, that this report documents in far more voluminous detail than we had. This stuff was secret.
Also recall the detail the Jan 6 committee showed in the organization of breaking into the Capitol building. It was not just that the crowd got in. It was that the Proud Boys were at the front of the crowd and were intending to be at the front of the crowd, doing the dirtiest of the dirty work, leading them to weak points that had been scouted out beforehand. So they knew they would have a crowd full of people that weren't in on the details, but were merely riled up. And the Proud Boys, was it the Oath Keepers? I believe it was the Oath Keepers. Now I have to go back and look. One of the many terrorist groups that supports Donald Trump, MAGA, and the Republican Party literally led the charge into our nation's capital. It was organized. The filmmaker that was with them had evidence that he presented to suggest they were in contact with people in the White House. The lack of hustle on this investigation in and of itself ought to be a crime that ought to be investigated. I'm talking Merrick Garland under investigation for his failure.
Even at the end of that terrible day, people didn't know what's in the new report, now revealed that the plots extended after the attack. Trump tried to join the crime in progress, kept his motorcade on hand in case he couldn't go later. And that's, again, according to his own staff and protectors. His driver and a Secret Service agent testifying under oath that within 30 seconds of getting to the vehicle after the ellipse speech, the president asked if he could go to the Capitol. And remember, presidents are ordering people when they tell subordinates what they want. The motorcade didn't even disband on arriving at the White House as usual, the report noting instead the motorcade was instructed to stand by in case the move to the Capitol happened. So, in plain English, Trump tried to join the crime in progress, broke protocol to keep the option open because he still wanted to go back to the literal crime scene. And then if that wasn't enough, after the attack and the violence, the report details that while Trump watched the carnage on TV at the White House and then finally was pushed into telling the rioters to go home, he and Giuliani continued to seek to delay the joint session of Congress.
Ooh.
I told you I had highlights for you. That's a huge one. Think about that. Donald Trump and his lead election attorney were still trying to enact one of the planks of the coup plot to delay and sabotage the certification, to create the kind of chaos that they thought could help them hold on to power after the attack. Continuing the plot after the violent attack is some of the hardest evidence available that the attack was part of the plot. Now, I said that in a legal way. Here's a different way to say it. If you go to do something and it gets out of hand, right? You go to drive to the supermarket, but you hit someone in the car by accident, and the prosecutors are looking at that and saying, did you murder someone with your car? Did you have an accident? What you do after the accident can be very compelling for the evidence. Do you
Very good analogy.
call the authorities? Do you administer help? Are you worried about this because it wasn't your goal? Or conversely, do you continue to do the thing that makes it look like that accident wasn't an accident, that you intended to harm someone? For example, you got back in your car and tried to hit someone again. They were continuing to try to sabotage the certification after the day of the 6th. That's in the report, and that's one of the crimes that's recommended for referral. All of this unseen and unknown to the general public, the committee emphasizes, and that element of surprise was key because the report notes it might have worked. If enough state of
Oh. He looks how I feel. And I look how a meth head feels, but still. Okay, I accidentally froze it on the exact face. That's how I feel every time I see that Donald Trump is a free man. That is exactly how I feel.
officials had gone along, it might have worked. You see it right there. That was the coup plan. Steal the election, even potentially without a physical attack. So the Trump team did think they had to have some level of extreme action, whether you call that rushing the Capitol or threatening Mike Pence, which the president, of course, did in public, or surrounding it in a way to obstruct or delay the certification. That itself, again, is a crime, even if you don't charge them on insurrection. Now, if you're thinking that these other, say, nonviolent crimes or bloodless coup parts are not what's gotten the most attention, and if that sounds so important, why haven't we heard more about it? Again, that's partly by design. That's why I think the committee did a good job in the report of laying out the stuff that's not quite as headline grabbing. Why haven't we heard more about this? Well, here's why.
Welcome to Fight Club.
Ooh, don't get me in trouble.
The first rule of Fight Club is you do
That
not
you
talk
speak
about
over
Fight Club.
the movie clip
Second rule of
that
Fight
he's
Club
using in his
is
report.
you do not talk about Fight Club.
And that you don't get copyrighted.
The first rule of Coup Club is you don't talk about it, like any secret endeavor that could fall apart even if just exposed. The report shows that Trump's plan to go to the Capitol, which I've emphasized to you tonight in the quotes I've read, it had to stay secret because it wasn't just a plan to show up at the Capitol. Again, if the plan was just to show up, wave, give one more speech, and then walk away, why would that need to be a secret? No. What is compelling about this, what makes it look guilty, is that it was not just legal. It was a secret plan to advance a criminal plot.
There you go.
And then to fake a contested election, try to force it to the House vote, as we've explained, that mishugas, to use a legal term of art. Now, the report shows Coup Club kept the endgame secret. Most Trump fans who risked it all to storm the Capitol did not know about the nature of the way they wanted to stage a contested election or use voter fraud and elector fraud to claim it was contested and then try to have a House vote. So the committee refers these folks for indictment on the idea that if there are no consequences for the people on your screen, whether they were president or not, whether they were in the DOJ or not, like Mr. Clark, whether they're lawyers or not, like Mr. Eastman and Giuliani, whatever they once were, they are citizens today. They are human beings in our society.
No
and if
reason
they don't face any consequences whatsoever, none of them, then Team Coup might learn the lesson that, sure, there were some consequences. I don't want to minimize them because those prosecutions are real. We've reported on them. The sedition trial is a big deal. But what I am telling you here is the bloodless part of the coup. If they learn that maybe that's not a big deal because this time it failed, but nobody on that screen went to jail, then that risks turning the failed coup into a practice session.
Okay, so I don't want to go too hard on him because, one, he's on live TV. It's really hard to get details 100% on anything. And broadly, I think he's right on it. Basically, we are showing Republicans right now what they can and cannot get away with. And so far, they have no reason to believe that the law applies to them. Where I disagree slightly, it is not just these people. And I understand why he's using the term bloodless coup to refer to those fellows. But at the end of the day, even if you were to delete all of the January 6th committee's findings from the record, you still have the fact that Trump was saying the election was rigged before the election even got going. He said every election he was in was rigged, including the one he won. That was his explanation for how he didn't win the popular vote, which he contradictorily says that he did win. But the reason he didn't win was because it was rigged. That's what he said. Insane. He bears responsibility. But I don't want to go too hard on Ari because he's nailing it here. And what's really important is that we have not just two Americas, we have at least four Americas. We have right-wing and sane people, and then each of those groups is divided up between people that watch exclusively corporate media and people that have a familiarity with the internet. If you watch the internet, you have access to a variety of things, including Google, which will allow you to fact check, which means necessarily people that do what I'm attempting to do with this channel have to dot their I's and cross their T's. Or people will jump in the comments and tell them how it is, as well they should. By the way, if I get something wrong, let me know. There's few things I enjoy more than being a nitpicky little nerd and correcting myself. But the people watching this guy are well behind where you are in terms of how bad this is, generally speaking. And it's great. It is great to know that he's out there spelling it out, putting their pictures up there, being frank about how bad it was, their participation, how criminal it was, and also that there's going to be consequences if we don't actually prosecute these people. This is it. We've given too many Republicans passes. Nixon, Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, Trump. All Republican presidents since Nixon have committed crimes worthy of prison time. None have been punished at all. You could argue Nixon got punished with a pardon, which made him not finish out his second term. Okay, he got an out-of-school suspension. That's what he got for Watergate. Nothing for the Chenault affair. Not a one thing. So, we are now at the point where no more passes can be given. And Ari's saying it. I got nothing but respect for that, for him saying that. He's not been someone I necessarily agreed with in the past. I have just about no critiques for this. I am sharing this with you mostly as a way to say, hey, good news. People that are normally firmly asleep are going to wake up a little bit. All right, so saying what he just said, but in a much faster way, and in a way that's quite catchy, is someone I just came across called Really American. We can watch the entirety of his video in the length of time that I took to give an intro to it, so let's just do it.
That he did hold foreign bank accounts.
Hunter Biden has a Chinese bank account?
What did you say?
Oh, sorry, that was fuckface.
The stupid Washington Post.
As the state and federal charges stack up, Tiny Fingers lawyers are busier than Nick Cannon on Father's Day. But the question is, can America stomach putting a former president in federal prison?
Well, I'm not a crook.
Or maybe the bigger question is, can we afford to let him hang around like a beer fart in a service elevator?
That's a good one.
Trump stole top secret documents and attempted a third world style coup.
I think it's time to hear from someone stupid.
I don't have any proof of this.
Letting him walk is like saying Jeffrey Dahmer's crime was chewing with his mouth open.
They call me a liar.
Trump funded his empire in the backing of Russian oligarchs. He paid no taxes, and while president, had a checking account in China.
China.
We have young black men in prison for simply smoking a joint, while this sociopath talks about arresting journalists.
They're telling us he's a criminal. Okay.
Hunter Biden's junk may have been on his laptop, but the real penis belongs in Leavenworth.
Goddamn right. Who's with me? Winning.
Yes!
Okay, so, all roads lead to Rome, I suppose. Very different method of delivery there. Kind of a drive time shock jock DJ style. But you know what? When you're right, you're right. Now, I'm not familiar with beer farts, but if they're anything like whiskey vomits, then that's an accurate description. Absolutely nailed it. And let us not forget, the entirety of this administration was scum. Here's Hope Hicks on Twitter. Her post-Jan 6 texts. All of us who didn't have jobs lined up will be perpetually unemployed. I'm so mad and upset. We all look like domestic terrorists now. This made us unemployable, untouchable. God, I'm so mad. Let's take it again from the top. All of us who didn't have jobs lined up will be perpetually unemployed. A complaint about how Jan 6 affected her. I'm so mad and upset. We all look like domestic terrorists now. First of all, because you are. Second of all, again, a complaint about how that day affected her. 7 dead. This made us unemployable, untouchable. God, I'm so mad. I'm so sorry, Hope Hicks, that January 6th was hard for you. That it made it a little bit harder for you to get a job. Maybe if you were not a servant of a fascist regime, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. but you were. I have no sympathy for you. And I tell this to you, dear audience, simply so that you remember, just because she's got a movie star smile over there, doesn't mean she isn't a bastard. She is. Everyone in that administration is either guilty of a crime directly, or they are guilty of failing to report a crime. Not a one of them should be able to leave their house without just getting booed like their neighbors every time they see him. Just boo, boo. F you, Hope Hicks, boo. Walking through the grocery store, I'm shocked they're not just pelted with cabbages and people saying like, I'll pay for this, I'll pay for that. Oh, I'll pay for this one. Don't worry, I'll pay for this. Store manager just going, no charge, no charge. Yeah, it's fine, no charge, no charge, yeah. Here, take a few more. These are rotten. So that should be the treatment they get anywhere in America. Anywhere on earth, they should walk into prison to say, I just need a break from the cabbages. That's the treatment these people ought to have. That's how despicable they are. Probably time for a palate cleanser. As long as we're on the topic of Twitter, let me switch over here for a moment. Yeah, talking about Twitter. Well, wouldn't you know it? Elon Musk is having a real rough time. A recent video came out, I believe from TYT or maybe Ring of Fire. We're not viewing that just yet, obviously. But explaining that, it was TYT. But anyway, explaining that the perception of him is down across the board. Is he a rich guy? Is he a smart guy? Is he an innovator? All down. But that is just a bunch of people's opinions. That doesn't really affect him. It's not like Tesla's quarterly earnings are down. Oh, wait. Tesla Incorporated on Monday fell short of Wall Street estimates for fourth quarter electric vehicle deliveries, slammed by lingering logistics problems and slowing demand amid rising interest rates and recession fears. Hold up, we're coming to a but. The world's most valuable automaker delivered 405,000 vehicles in the last 3 months of the year, compared with Wall Street expectations of 431,000 vehicles, according to Refinitiv data. The company had delivered 308,000 vehicles in the same period a year earlier. Okay, so there's the but. It's still technically growth for the company, except so much of Elon Musk's value is simply the stock he owns in his companies, which are simply a bunch of rich guys' perceptions of how much those companies are worth. Wall Street had an expectation that Tesla would be moving 431,000 vehicles. And instead, they moved 405,000 vehicles. If you thought his financial woes were bad, he dropped from number one richest guy in the world to number two. Oh, get ready. Because he just lost a significant amount of perceived value, which is, as we keep finding out in all kinds of ways, really his only value. Delightful. As the kids say 2 years ago, you love to see it. Oh. So, main story of the day. That'll be Mr. Kevin McCarthy. He has wanted to be Speaker of the House so bad for so long. He's done a lot to be Speaker of the House. He endangered America to be Speaker of the House. I don't know if you remember the days immediately following Jan 6th. But Republicans were kind of quiet. Heads hanging low. Lindsey Graham, the eternal henchman, was saying he'd had enough. And then Kevin McCarthy took a trip down to Mar-a-Lago and made a big display of showing that the Republican Party was going to forgive Donald Trump. And from there, it lampshaded the fact that no one in power was actually going to be serious about holding a Republican accountable. So don't feel bad for Kevin McCarthy when I tell you this man's in trouble. With the narrow majority that that Republicans managed to get in the House, he requires no more than 4 Republicans to vote for somebody else to be Speaker in order to not get to be Speaker of the House. To add a little delicious insult to these racists, in the time that they are doing a second vote, which is what they will have to do, a black woman will be in charge of the House. Her name is Cheryl Johnson. It'll be the first time ever that that's happened. So making a little history for people of color, and also making the Republican Party look like clowns. That vote is today. Let's see what Ali Velshi has to say about that.
We're just hours away from Republicans taking control of the House of Representatives, and tonight, Kevin McCarthy might just be the most nervous man in Washington. You see, McCarthy really wants to be Speaker of the House. It has been his singular focus in Washington for years, and that drive is the reason behind his deal with the devil that he made with Donald Trump. McCarthy has spent years placating Trump and enabling his worst behavior in exchange for Trump's support and the support of his hardline allies in Congress for his eventual speakership. It's why McCarthy went from saying this in the days after January 6th.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term.
He went from saying that to going down to Mar-a-Lago 2 weeks later to kiss Trump's ring and to...
Yeah, wait a minute. That is Lauren Boebert, and while Trump is getting chewed out, even she is not doing her normal kicking her feet and having a toddler temper tantrum. That's hilarious.
Went from saying that to going down to Mar-a-Lago 2 weeks later to kiss Trump's ring and to beg his forgiveness. So now McCarthy's time is finally here. Tomorrow, the House convenes and the speakership vote takes place. And it looks like some of Trump's most fervent supporters in Congress might now throw Kevin McCarthy under the bus anyway. You see, because of the Republicans' surprisingly thin majority in the House, McCarthy can only afford 4 Republican defectors during tomorrow's vote. And reporting indicates there may be anywhere from 5 to 10 so-called Never Kevin MAGA congressmen who are not currently supporting McCarthy, including
it's petty, but so am I, and I gotta say it. How come Matt Gaetz always looks like a cartoon villain? Like, not an anime villain. He looks like the kind of villain that tries to do genuinely evil stuff, but is like constantly thwarted by the Smurfs or like Shaggy and Scooby, like harmless heroes, little kid heroes. All right, we'll get back to serious stuff.
MAGA congressmen who are not currently supporting McCarthy, including Matt Gaetz of Florida and Andy Biggs of Arizona. Now, if McCarthy does not get the support he needs during the first ballot of the vote, it will be the first time in 100 years that the vote goes to a second ballot. Even if McCarthy ultimately does clinch the job, he could be starting from a historically weak position, which may be why some Republican partisans are loudly pushing for McCarthy in right-wing media.
I think the Republican Party right now is in the greatest danger of meltdown that it's been since 1964. I thought at least
do they have it up there? Yeah, that's Newt Gingrich. F that guy. You want to know where MAGA got its start? Right up there. In the early 90s, this SOB is the person that got Republicans going down the trail of insanity that they have followed my whole life. The Clinton impeachment, which was essentially over nothing. He lied under oath about a beej he got. Orchestrated by this punk. Terrible human being.
House was going to be a sign of stability, and these five guys decide to go out as kamikazes and see if they can't sink the whole Republican Party, and that's what they're doing. This is not about Kevin McCarthy. This is about the right of any five members to basically throw away the entire rest of the conference.
And the would-be speaker himself is making an enormous number of concessions to shore up support for his bid, including reinstating the Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene to her committee assignments, which she previously lost as punishment for past statements advocating violence against members of Congress and spreading offensive conspiracy theories. McCarthy's also reportedly pledged to support Marjorie Taylor Greene's bonkers proposal to hold investigations into whether January 6th insurrectionists are being held as, I hope you're sitting down, I'm not, political prisoners.
Jesus
But it doesn't end there. McCarthy's also promised to bring back an old congressional rule called motion to vacate the chair. As McCarthy's proposed it, the rule would allow any group of 5 disgruntled Republicans at any time to force a vote on whether or not to fire him as Speaker. It's the same process, by the way, that was essentially used to push the former Republican Speaker, John Boehner, out of the job back in 2015. Bringing it back would effectively kneecap McCarthy's speakership from the get-go. But in a recent letter, 9 current and incoming House Republicans told McCarthy that even those concessions don't go far enough.
Now, see, this is where it gets weird. Hold on a second. Remember that these people appear to do random stuff all the time. It's only random if you're like, but what legal reason could they have for doing that? What sensible, ethical reason could they have? They always try to analyze it as though these are like human beings. They're not. No, I mean, look. My only point is that they think they're going to gain something from this. On its face, Ali Velshi's baffled. Chris Hayes is baffled. Your old pal Jake is baffled. I don't know what it is, other than I am personally certain that it's dastardly. Either they think they're going to get some kind of political power, although I don't know why the 5-vote rule wouldn't be enough in terms of that. Why would you push your luck? Or there's some personal grudge, or we're going to find out there is some sort of a bribe that has been given. It's entirely possible that, and now let me be clear, this is wild speculation. This is a what if as an example of the kind of thing I'm thinking about. It's entirely possible that they are trying to start a third party by making the Republicans be weak, look weak by actually being weak. And then using that as a jumping off point to say, we're forming the MAGA party. It's wild stuff, but I do know this. It's great for progressives. Love watching the snakes eat each other.
Even more groveling and appeasement before the day is done tomorrow. For his part, McCarthy's projecting confidence.
Is he?
McCarthy, do you have the votes for Speaker locked in tomorrow?
I think we're going to have a good day tomorrow.
What else can he say, though? You know?
What are your conversations like with members?
Good to see you.
Are you prepared to make more concessions in exchange for more support?
That hurts.
Hope you all have a very nice New Year.
Oh, yeah, real
A
confident.
staffer, by the way, for McCarthy was even seen wheeling McCarthy's belongings into the Speaker's office, which could make for an awfully embarrassing scene should he ultimately lose. But even if he wins, it certainly seems like his deal with the devil, with Trump and Trumpism, will end like it always does, in further embarrassment and betrayal. Annie Carney is a congressional correspondent at the New York Times, where she reported on Kevin McCarthy's struggles to keep his conference in line. Tim Miller is a former spokesman for the Republican National Committee, who's currently a writer-at-large at The Bulwark. They both...
Buddy, you are on national television, and you chose to wear a shirt partially unbuttoned and what is that, like a conch shell necklace? What on earth are you doing, dude?
Join me now. Good evening to both of you and a Happy New Year. Annie, nice to see you again. What's the likelihood of
I shall stay on screen
of Kevin
to
McCarthy
cover
being
his
Speaker
shame.
by the end of tomorrow?
Damn it. Damn it.
Even his allies are saying they don't quite see a path to 218, the magic number that he needs to win the vote. But, you know, there's still hours to go. There's deals to do. It's difficult to see how it works out. As you said, there's 5 hard no's. Perhaps even more concerning than that is these 9 or 10 Republicans that signed this letter on Sunday, who are kind of, we don't know where they are. They're indecisive. It's harder for McCarthy to count votes when he doesn't quite know where they stand. That included a few incoming freshman lawmakers. So the numbers aren't there for him right now. Something could happen between now and tomorrow morning. One thing that pro-McCarthy people are saying is the biggest thing he has going in his favor is that there's not a clear alternative. We can talk about that a little bit later, but there's not, like, their main argument has been, okay, you don't like Kevin McCarthy, but who is, so what? So what's your plan? There's not a, there's not like a Paul Ryan standing in the wings right now. So they think they have that going for them. We'll see. I'm not going to make a prediction right now. This is a very volatile situation.
You are wise. You've been in this business for a long time. You're wise enough to do that, not to do that. Tim, let's address what Annie was saying. She said we'll talk about it later. Let's talk about it right now. There isn't a clear alternative. There's Andy Biggs, who some people voted for. About 15% of the conference suggested they might take him. I don't know whether that was just a protest. But what happens if Kevin McCarthy doesn't have the 218 he needs? Do they just keep voting until they decide on Kevin McCarthy? Because look, I guess anything can happen. What are some of the possibilities?
How rich is Biggs, and does he own real estate? Questions for later.
Conceivably, they keep voting until they end up with Kevin McCarthy, and I think the 5 "quote unquote" never Kevins get their scalp, get more concessions. Maybe you move that motion to vacate down from 5 members to just 1 member, and so I think that there is a potential alternative in Steve Scalise, though he's not running for it. He comes from the more conservative part of the caucus traditionally than McCarthy hasn't made as many enemies in MAGA world as McCarthy has, despite all of his efforts to suck up to MAGA world. But again, Scalise isn't trying. So I think that would be a kind of situation where he might emerge should you get to ballot 4, 5, 6, and it becomes clear that these never McCarthys really aren't going to budge. I think the reality of this situation is that McCarthy is more likely than not to end up getting it. You get at least one of the 5 to give in, and then he has the votes. But he's not Speaker in any meaningful sense if these folks are running the show, right? If they're in charge, and he might get the bust, he might get to sit behind Biden at the State of the Union, but who's actually the leader of the party, if he has to make concession after concession to the Matt Gaetzes of the world?
I mean, the chaos is amazing. Truly. I really can't offer you in good conscience like 2 or 3 scenarios that make sense for why they are doing this. I can only tell you things like pushing for a third party, literally bribed by another politician. If I had to put money on it, I would say pushing for a third party. But, man, it is only in the realm of wild things like that where we will find an answer for this, because within American politics, the rules that are set, if you're playing honestly, what they are doing makes no sense. But I don't like them, so I love their terrible strategy. Ooh, it's a good Tuesday. I've had a lot of good Tuesdays lately. Well, you may recall that yesterday we talked about a rare good politician from Florida, Maxwell Frost. He's a progressive. He's a realist. So progressive. And we saw a clip of him on ABC giving an interview, during which, as a small portion of that interview, he mentioned it's expensive, or when asked about the expense of moving to D.C., he said he was going to have to couch surf for a little bit. Well, it turns that you might recognize a portion of that clip in this segment from Joy Reid, because Republicans, being dumb and scummy, tried to pick on him for it. And, of course, he, being a progressive, is smarter than they are. And so he annihilated them on social media. And it's pretty fun to watch.
When you were running, you had to do some Uber work, right? You worked as an Uber driver because you needed to live while you were also running for Congress. What's it going to be like up here? I mean, this is not cheap. Do you have to?
Yeah. I mean, it's not cheap. I'm dealing with it right now, getting denied from apartments, trying to figure out where to live because I have bad credit. Probably just going to have to couch surf for a little bit.
That was Representative-elect Maxwell Alejandro Frost of Florida, the first member of Gen Z elected to Congress, on struggling to find an apartment for many reasons, including available housing inventory and credit. Nothing unusual for the average 25-year-old in America. And while being a congressman-elect is not exactly average, that situation should be something that a lot of people can relate to, with the country in the midst of an affordable housing crisis that's hitting young Americans particularly hard. Nearly 1/3 of Gen Z is still living with their parents. And among those who have been able to move out, 1/3 are spending about half of their monthly income on rent. But the Republican Party clearly doesn't care about that. Instead, the RNC research team mocked Frost in a tweet for having to couch surf with a salary of $174,000 a year. Frost clapped back, tweeting, LOL, so out of touch that they don't understand how renting an apartment works. Let me break this down. I don't get my first paycheck till February, and I don't have a lot of money. When you move into an apartment, you pay first, deposit, sometimes last, and for furniture.
The RNC research team. The RNC research team. Oh, they're idiots across the board. It's amazing.
Joining me now is Congressman-elect Maxwell Alejandro Frost. And Congressman-elect, it's great to see you again. And I am somebody who does remember what it's like to do rent. And it's changed a lot even from when I was your age. I mean, back then you could just do first and last. Now a lot of these places want first, last, and additional security deposit. Like, it actually is really expensive to rent. And this is, DC is one of the most expensive places to rent. So talk a little bit about your experience of just trying to find an apartment.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, it's difficult. And, there's millions of Americans who face this on a daily basis across this country. We know that it's expensive to move in somewhere. Like I said in the tweet, it's not just, your rent. You got first, you got last, you got deposit, you got to furnish it. A lot of leasing agencies and a lot of these management companies are actually viewing the amount of money that you pay for your application fee and to run the credit check as a source of revenue. We see some of these fees going up to $200 at the maximum. And so it just shows that moving in is unaffordable for so many people. You got to have so much capital on hand. And for me, this is my second place I'm looking for, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of Republican folks clowning me on Twitter, saying, oh, you can't afford an apartment. This is my second apartment. I have a home in Orlando. But it just goes to show that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on affordable housing, especially in protecting renters and tenants.
I mean, I'm just spiking the football a little bit, but we did talk about affordable housing as being a local progressive issue. If you want to start getting involved, great jumping off point. Thank you, Mr. Frost, Representative Frost. If you want to start getting into local politics, one of the issues to get familiar with is affordable housing. That is a frontline battle for progressive politics. Definitely worth looking into. At the very least, if you decide, I'm going to start showing up at city council meetings. Affordable housing is the topic to look out for.
I mean, and you live in Orlando. I mean, Florida is one of the most expensive places to live in this country. Let's just be clear. It's expensive like on New York and California level. There's just a list here that shows the states with the highest rent, one-bedroom rent estimates. D.C. doesn't even rank. It isn't even in there. It's number 10. Washington State's number 10. But Hawaii's number 1, New York, California, Virginia. Florida's number 6. Florida's actually really, really expensive. You're talking about like 1.4 or, $1,418 a month. But the other piece is, and I think a lot of Americans can relate to this, you talked about credit. Credit will keep somebody, even if they are making a decent salary. And, a congressman's salary is a pretty good salary, but credit will keep you out. And sometimes the credit checks for renting are even tougher than the credit checks for buying. Let
me pause that for a second. Sometimes this gal gets it, man. I didn't like her in the early days, believe it or not, but as she got her own show and has grown and I think has gotten more sway in the studio where she works, I've been liking her takes more and more and more. Yes, credit. You want to talk about keeping the poor poor? That's way number one to do it. Prevent them from accessing things simply based on the fact that they haven't had money before.
In that situation who are your age.
The poor is us.
Yeah, exactly. And look, when it comes down to my campaign, I worked at Uber to pay my bills. It didn't cover everything. I had to run up a lot of my credit cards to be able to just live while I was campaigning. And that affects your credit. Believe it or not, I had amazing credit before I ran for Congress. And now, not so much.
Real-time correcting my bad take. A lot of us over 52, the poor is basically everybody who isn't rich. We do not have much of a middle class remaining in the U.S. That's a rant for another time. This is Max's time to shine.
And so I'm working through that. And the other thing that's funny from this RNC research account is they're acting like I get a lump sum of $174,000 on day one, and that's not the way that a salary works. I don't get paid till February. And the whole point of me bringing this up is it shows that, look, the entry point to the seat of power determines who gets to that seat of power. And if that entry point filters out working class and poor Americans, then we shouldn't be surprised on why we don't have as many working class people represented in our government.
And I'm so glad that you ran and won, because you're going to represent so many people who are going through the same thing, and they can relate to you because you're telling your story in a very open way. So I appreciate you doing that. I would be remiss if I had you on from Florida and didn't ask you about your governor. He is now using the resources of the state when he could be fixing the insurance crisis in that state and the affordability crisis in that state. He's investigating a holiday drag show in my former county, in Broward County. That's what he's doing with his resources, and threatening that people who take children to a drag show with them can have the kids, have the intervention from Child Protective Services. What in the world is going on in your state?
That's a big question, Joy. They have a few hours. No, I'll tell you this. Our governor is more concerned with children going to drag shows than he is with children getting shot in their classrooms, than people getting shot on the street. And it shows the hypocrisy. I mean, look, due to his failures to provide for working class people, he's scapegoating vulnerable communities. You can't afford your rent, it's the problem of drag queens. You can't afford this, it's the problem of our LGBTQ plus community, or immigrants, or black people, or poor people. And I think Floridians are going to see right through it. And look, part of what I see my job as is obviously the work of legislating here in D.C., the work of power building at home in Orlando, but also communicating. Every time this governor does something that's dangerous, and we've seen him do this all the time, he acts like a dictator, and we have to be honest and blunt about it. We have to tell people how that's going to harm folks. And so he's using these resources that our state has to criminalize drag shows, but not criminalize and ensuring that, folks can live in their cities without the fear of gun violence.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I mean, that right there gives me hope. We got a chance. We have a chance. That man, Max Frost, comes from the hell pit that is Florida currently. I was worried that all Floridians had drank the Kool-Aid, but no. There's a wonderful politician right there, elected by Floridians to represent them. Florida, you ought to be proud of yourselves for that. Well done. Let's let him finish up.
And we see right through it.
Well, thank you, and tell him about it before he bans history and information in that state, because he's on something with his supposed free state of Florida. It's something to behold. Congressman-elect Maxwell Alejandro Frost, come back anytime. Thank you, and good luck finding an apartment in D.C. All right. And
so, I mean, just wonderful to see that Max Frost, he's not even sworn in yet, and he's already having a positive effect on American politics. I'm looking forward very much to the legislation he gets to do. Unfortunately, he's going to be going into a branch of government that will have a Republican majority currently. But who knows what's going to happen? Today is the Speaker of the House vote. And apparently Kevin McCarthy does not have the votes. Who will be Speaker of the House then? It wasn't immediately clear. Now, arguably, if there's been some dealing behind the scenes, in the second vote today, assuming McCarthy doesn't pass the first one, we will get a candidate, a very Republican guy that does very evil Republican things. But I mean, every victory compounds. When we get somebody like Max Frost going to Washington, it has a positive effect for all of us. It is a voice of sanity. It has been a great start to 2023 already. We're in day 2. Well, day 3 now. I've been watching so much news, I'm literally losing track of time. 3 days into 2023, and I've been smiling for most of it. I want to close out with one more brief segment. Yesterday, I put out a video. I believe it's called How We Get Big Money Out of Politics. It was a response to a poll we did asking what you most wanted to hear for. The more I think about that video, the more I think there's too much talk. Here it is. You want to know how to get big money out of politics? There's a link in the bottom of this stream. There's going to be a link in the bottom of the upload when I re-upload it in about, given processing time, 40 minutes. If you want to volunteer for that organization, volunteer for that organization. If you don't want to do that, all you have to do to get big money out of politics, write your representative, write your senator, write your governor. Google who they are for finding your representative. I have a link specifically for that. When you find your representative, go to their contact page. It will tell you how to contact them. Every one of these people has an email and a phone line which is dedicated to taking calls from their constituents. That's you. Tell them the words written in the description. I want you, as my representative, to publicly endorse the Restore Democracy Amendment. When you say you want big money out of politics, the Restore Democracy Amendment is the form that will take. It would be an amendment to our Constitution which would give legislators the right, which they currently do not have, to ban big corporations from dumping millions and millions into the political candidate of their choice, and therefore buying their loyalty, and therefore deciding what the laws are. We have a fourth branch of government right now. It's a fact. Corporations dictate what the laws will be. Do you really want King Ronald McDonald telling you how you're going to be able to live your life? They use this to avoid paying taxes. In other words, they use this to do business in our country and avoid paying for the roads that they use, the schools which teach the children which they hire, and then steal from. They use this to degrade worker protections. They use this to create so-called right-to-work laws, which in fact kill unions. This is what corporations do. They use this to turn politicians, which are supposed to be your voice, into puppets. If you want this to end, if you want this madness to stop, use the link. Contact your representative. It'll make you feel good just to write one email and know that one politician must read it. It's their job to read it. You cannot simply say, I want big money out of politics. You can throw that in there if you want. Get your meaning crystal clear, certainly. But you have to show them that you expect specific action. That specific action has been worked on, has been refined and thought through by a group called Citizens Take Action. I've looked into them. They check out. This amendment would be the form getting big money out of politics would take. So we need to get it passed. In the video I did yesterday, I did show that this is not simply a progressive desire. This is in fact a desire by everybody in America, by and large, every voting bloc in America, except, of course, the billionaire voting bloc. but fuck 'em. Contact your representative. Contact your senator. Contact your governor. These people all rely on your vote. Now, if this is going to work, we need millions of people in America to do it. Bernie Sanders just released a video talking about how no real change came from the top down in the U.S. It's always come from the grassroots, bottom up, millions of people. It sounds daunting. Let's count to 1 million together. 1. That's you. Write the email. The line's written for you already. Copy it, paste it. I'll be 2. And if we're lucky, a couple other people watching this video will be 3 and 4. And if we get a few politicians talking about this amendment publicly, it's going to snowball, folks. We can do this. We have the power. We have the ability. If you're listening to this stream, you're taking the time to inform yourself, you have the will. So write the email. This is a brand new channel. And I'm taking a big gamble on it. We passed 100 subscribers on January 1st. And when I got up bright and early to start putting together this video, we were at 178. Made my morning yet again. If you found this useful, if you think leftist content is a benefit for America, I encourage you to give us a like and a subscribe. This has been Wicked, WYCD. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake. I'll see you tomorrow.
You can tell that I make it look easy. It's a cheat code. It's a free throw. If it's so illegal,